try.
It's not the start of the year and then it goes away.
Yeah, right.
It's a good idea.
Let's talk about that. Why is it a good idea to continue to talk about the nature of science and the history of science throughout the whole year?
To show them the connections and all the different contexts of teaching.
And in the middle school, where a lot of times when people are moving to an integrated curriculum, you can use the nature of science to connect physics to chemistry, to earth science, to biology. And when I taught 7th grade at a previous school district, that's what I did. I used nature science as the guiding principle, the overarching ideas, and then we used the different contents. I taught all 4 different contents in 1 year to kind of connect them to the nature science, and that provided that framework for kids. Why else is it good to not just teach nature science at the beginning of the year?
Because it's complicated.
We're trying to change misconceptions.
Which takes time. You noted that it was complicated, which I absolutely agree with. How do we uncomplicate it for kids? Like, how do we break it down? How do we help kids put some things together?
I think the way you're doing it, actually, using chunks of it with each area that you go to, it makes it, it doesn't keep it as a separate unit. Like, you know, kids have this sense when you teach something and move to the next chapter that, okay, that's gone to bed and it's done and it's over and it's out of my head. By infusing it all the way along, you have the ability to make it more, more real and more touchable, pliable, usable.
I want to come back to that last sentiment in a second. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and not only that, but how you gave the example earlier with Galileo, and you said, okay, now this particular strand of the nature of science we were talking about, how does this relate to this experiment we just did? You know, having it related to something they actually did.
Which you've actually kind of connected that for me, because if we just did history of science and never had kids think about their actual hands-on experience, they're going to miss some of those connections. They're going to think, oh, that's how that scientists do it, but we do it a different way. And so when you said touchable, pliable, tactile, whatever, having students do experiences that reflect the accurate nature of science and then connecting it to real scientists. The reason that you need to connect it, because a lot of people think just the experiences are enough. Well, just the experiences, the kids will actually just say, well, that's just the way that teacher teaches. It's not actually how science works. That's because, think about it, if you're doing it and nobody else in your district is, you're 1 out of 13 that those kids are going to see. And so you're the oddball, so that's just the way you teach. That's not actually how science works. So you have to explicitly draw out of them, asking them questions about how do we put this together? Like, what does this mean? Like, we're doing it this way. How is that like real scientists? The reason the history is so important is because kids can dismiss this and say that's not what real scientists do. But when you give them a real scientist that they've heard of maybe, or maybe one that they haven't heard of, they can't say that's not how real scientist works because it is. That's a real scientist. Of course, your really bright and challenging students might be able to say, well, you could have written that story however you wanted. But, you know, if they're at that level to challenge me, I say, way to go. Education is a dangerous and powerful force.